I remember somebody said, bring a man to your pitch meetings, just like kind of any man. And I was like, I didn't get it when I heard it. I thought it sounded ridiculous, but I was probably give the same advice. I think it was definitely a big help that I did it with a male co-founder. The data shows that women do have a harder time getting the funding, and they raise a low valuation, they raise low amounts. The system kind of rewards a little bit bad behavior. And I think that's a responsibility on the investor side as well. If you keep funding technology which doesn't value transparency, inclusion, diversity, gender progressiveness, you are part of maintaining a culture that is not actually serving the users, the women using these products.
In today's episode, I'm joined by Ida Tin. Ida is the co-founder and former CEO of Clue, a periods tracking app, which has over 10 million active users monthly. Ida also coined the term FemTech, which is an industry soon set to be worth over $1 trillion. In today's episode, Ida shares how growing up traveling with her parents impacted her. She shares how and why she came up with the term FemTech. She also talks about the funding issues faced by female founders and FemTech startups. And she talks about why investors need to start redefining success in order to solve these issues. So if you're a female founder, an investor, or someone working in FemTech, this episode is for you. Wonderful. Welcome, Ida. It's nice to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me.
I've been very excited about this interview. I've been doing a lot of research, and from what I understand, you coined the term FemTech. So I'm looking forward to getting into that a little bit more. But first, let's start with your childhood, because I read on your LinkedIn profile that you toured the world as a child on a motorcycle with your parents. Can you tell us more about that and how has it shaped you?
It's true. My parents are kind of adventurers who decided to go travel with their two small kids on motorcycles the first time when I was 1 year old through South America. And well, I always felt that it was such a gift that I had gotten to see the planet, literally. I've traveled extensively, and it definitely gave me a sense of the world being huge, but also really present in my system. And I'd seen women all around the world living in so many different ways, but I think that was one of the things that informed my desire to do something for family planning, knowing that it was something that I needed in my own life, but also having seen that it's something that women need across the planet, and of course, their partners too. But maybe also having seen my parents live this quite unusual work life, because they would come home and write books about the tours and then talk about it, and making me trust that I could do things I dreamed of and somehow make a living out of it. So I think it definitely did influence me. Yeah.
Amazing. I think that's something that's so relevant today. A lot of people are talking about forming your purpose and living your life on your terms. I wanted to talk about you coining FemTech, which has had a massive impact on bringing together startups that are focusing on women's health. It's been estimated now, from what I understand, that in 2027, that sector is going to be worth $1 trillion, from my understanding. Can you tell me about what led to you creating this new category to describe women's health startups?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was because TechCrunch Disrupt, this tech conference in San Francisco, were putting on their first panel on female health. It was in the morning after the big party, but nevertheless. And I was researching to see what were the other panelists and what were they building, and also how were they describing what they were building, because I knew that I actually find it quite difficult to find the right words to describe what Clue was doing, because we were a peer tracker, but we were also other things. And as I was reading about these other companies, I could see, oh, we are like neighbors. Like we are in the same space. We're not doing exactly the same, but I felt some sort of relatedness. And I was then running around at this conference before the panel, and I was like doing my micro user research. I was like, hey, female femtech entrepreneur, even though that wasn't the term yet, would you feel comfortable if there was like a category label and you were inside this pocket of companies? Would that feel all right? And I got positive feedback, and I thought, okay, so on stage, I said, we need a term to describe people working on technologies addressing needs that women have because of their biology. I suggest we call it FemTech. And then my co-founder, the one I mentioned before, he was very smart. He said we should trademark it and make it a commons good so that nobody can take it and own it. And we should make a Wikipedia entry so that it's a thing in the world and people could see where it came from. So we did that. And I wanted to, in a way, help us find each other, but also help us feel like we are part of a big thing, because I felt that it was a big thing. Like, oh, wow, we are all building in this field, but we are being perceived as like little kind of embarrassing niche things. And I thought if we are seen as a whole, we will be perceived differently. And also wanting to give male investors a word and female investors a word that was easy to say, because I know they all have to stand up Monday morning on their partnership meetings and present their cases. And I felt that just that simple thing that you could say is a femtech company would already bridge over to a place where these male investors be like, oh, it's like a fintech or ed tech or insurance tech. It's like, oh, it's just another part of tech, rather than it's this sort of icky, weird things that is like hard to talk about. It's amazing to see that a word can bring people together. And I think it's because there is so much energy in this. It really is a movement, because some big things are moving, which are cultural things, where women are wanting to solve problems that they care about. They don't want to put up with crappy solutions anymore, and they're doing things. And there's so much power in that movement.
Yeah, yeah. I do feel that just this word that enables women to say, like, hey, like, I can solve something in this area is very empowering.
Yes, it's really a rare corner of technology where women are really shaping the world to fit them. Actually, it's a part of technology that we could look at a little bit in a magnifying glass and be like, how does it work there? Because what's happening there is good. It's diverse teams, it's women solving things, it's creating data on lots of things we didn't have data on before. It's on the path to preventive medicine. There's so much, it's a huge business opportunity. There's so much good stuff there. And we actually could look into this magnifying glass and be like, wow, this is how we want to build tech. We need this to happen all over tech. And that is empowering and it's encouraging. And I think it's good for women. It's good for the planet. It's really, really positive. And it's also a struggle, even though there are now femtech funds, they're often very small and they're very early stage focused, which is wonderful. But if you get a bit further down this road on the entrepreneurial journey, like where are the later stage femtech funds?
Mm.
We need them. And we need tickets that are big. To build big companies, you need big tickets. And honestly, in femtech, only peanuts really have been invested in until now. So sometimes when people say, can you build big businesses in this industry? And where are the IPOs and where are the big acquisitions? And it's like, well, chicken and egg. Like first you invest a lot of money, then you get a lot of valuable companies.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you came up with the idea for Clue?
Yes, it really came out of almost a provocation of like, why has nobody innovated in family planning methods since the pill came out? It had been so long in terms of technology development. Everything had happened. We had put people on the moon, we got the internet, we got smartphones, and still a woman wouldn't know which days exactly she could actually get pregnant. And I thought, if the world just knew this one single thing, if a woman could pick up her phone and she could say, today I cannot get pregnant, or today I can get pregnant, that would literally change the world. And I thought, if nobody's building this, I'm going to try.
Mm.
Even though I didn't really have much that would seem like that would really work out. I know I was not a doctor or a scientist or a lawyer or something, but I really wanted to try and do that. And then as we were building this hardware, we knew that hardware was really difficult to build. And my co-founder and partner at the time, he said, why don't we start by building a period tracking app instead of start getting into the market, understanding users, building the user base. And that was a really important and smart insight, because over the years we understood that having the data on the female cycle really enabled us to do so many different things, not just for contraception, but for many things that women need along this reproductive journey. So that was how the idea came.
Mm. And now you're here today with over 10 million users in over, I think, 190 countries, from what I understand, which is a massive impact that you've had. Along the way, you've had to fundraise. Can you share some experiences around about fundraising?
Yes. So when we started fundraising, FemTech did not exist neither as a word or as a sector. And I think a lot of people felt that what we did felt like a niche, even though in my mind, I was like, hold on, without peers, there would be zero people on the planet. It did not feel like niche, but I think culturally, it was something that people were not very used to thinking about or talking about. And it was definitely challenging. I think for all startups, it's challenging raising money. The data shows that women do have a harder time getting the funding, and they raise a low valuation, they raise low amounts. And for me, I think it was definitely a big help that I did it with a male co-founder. There are always two sides. On one hand, I wish we could have raised more capital and that would have been easier and not such a time drain, which it is for all founders almost. And on the other hand, we were successful at it because most startups don't raise as much as we did. Or when things are tough, their investors will just let them die. Whereas in a couple of tight spots, our investors were really patient and visionary and kept backing us. So yeah, you can say we were underfunded or in some other way we were really successful. I think both is some way true. But it was definitely never easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I suppose leads us on to one of the things I wanted to discuss today, which was your LinkedIn post that you shared, which had over, I think, 1,500 likes and was reposted 115 times. So, for those of you who don't know or haven't seen Ida's post, you talk about the systemic issues in fundraising, and you mentioned the app Flow Health, which has now reached unicorn status from what I understand. And they've raised $200 million from investors, from what I've read about them. You call out the systemic issue, and you say in your article, the systemic issue is that it pays off to be a confident, brackets, white man, to get more money from men to do more things to make money. And you also mention the behavior and the values that these men hold. Can you shed some more light around this for those that haven't yet experienced this?
Mm. Well, first of all, I think it's wonderful that somebody wants to invest $200 million into a femtech company. We need much more of that. There's huge opportunity. And I meet so many amazing, amazing founders, both men and women, doing things in femtech. And so that's great. So Flow has been a dear competitor for many years. They came a couple of years after we had entered the market, and they have been really good executors. They have also taking a lot of inspiration, I think, for things that were already in the market, which is fair enough. But we have seen that they got called out for sharing too much sensitive data back to ad networks, and they got, like from the authorities in America. And now the same thing is happening in Canada. And it's this feeling that the tech community, and that's not specific to Flow or their investors, that's broadly speaking, really reward growth at all costs, also cost of users' privacy, or even building products that are serving their users in the best possible way. And some of the ways that I feel Flow has not served users best is continuing a cultural landscape around female health that's very gender normative and in my mind can be quite misinforming as well. And I think as tech builders, we just have a huge responsibility for what we offer as a norm in culture. This is touching millions and millions of people's very intimate lives in the sense of, am I normal? Am I okay? Should I do something else? Can I be who I am? Do I need to do specific things for my partner to like me? Like all of these things, I think are really important questions that influence women's well-being very much and the freedom we experience in our lives. And I think one of the issues is that if you build technology for women's lives and you don't actually have any of that lived experience on your team in leading positions or as founders, you end up with products that just feel a little bit off to my mind. And I think that's quite unfortunate. I think the investors who go back these companies They have a little bit that blindness as well, that they don't see that if they back a company that don't have that diversity built into their DNA, they're going to end up with products that are a little bit suboptimal. So I was, in a way, disappointed is not even the right word. I wasn't surprised, but I wanted to call out that if you keep funding technology which doesn't value transparency, inclusion, diversity, gender progressiveness, you are part of maintaining a culture that is not actually serving the users, the women using these products. And you're also rewarding a behavior where cutting a corner, doing things that are actually illegal or gray zone, and showing up in the world in a way that is not fully, in my mind, ethical. I find that problematic. I want the tech community to support the companies who not only produce a financial return, but actually produce a world that we want to live in. And I think that's also why many people reacted, because so many female founders in FemTech have this experience of, I'm building something I deeply care about. I deeply, deeply care about solving this problem for my users, and I cannot raise money. It's so difficult. I sit across people who don't have this lived experience, and they're like, why is this important? Or can this be a business? While you sit there and your whole system is burning with this deep insight, like the world needs this. And so when they see some men who are serial entrepreneurs and who doesn't really care about female health get that level of funding, it's just like this clash. I think many people felt. I was like, what? Like, why do these people get to build a huge company when I'm sitting here trying with everything I have to solve this real problem? And I think that was part of, I would say, me, as I have had the chance. I raised a lot of money. We made many mistakes. And that way, it wasn't so much sort of me. It was really this sense of systemic, like, why are we not rewarding the people who really care? Yeah.
Yeah. And what changes do you think that investors could make on their part? Like, what do you think could be done on the funding side to solve this problem?
I think it has to start at the top with the LPs, so the people giving the venture funds their capital. I think it has to start with them giving a different mandate where they say, we want you to create a financial return, and we want you to also make sure that the way you show up in the world is actually serving the world. I feel that we've lived in a world for a long time where if you could become a unicorn, you were successful. But I feel that it's a very narrow view of what success is. If I sit here as an LP, I'm wealthy and somebody creates more wealth, and I choose to not recognize that, well, their employees burned out, they were violating people's privacy and many other things, can I then say that I was successful? I think we're past the time where we can allow ourselves to have such a narrow view of successes. We live on a planet that is not thriving, and technology is literally rebuilding the world in data and tech right now. And I think it just has to be a baseline that as we do that, we have to take a more broad view of when are we successful. So I think that's one of the things that we can change. We redefine what success is, and we give each other mandates to care about other things than only money. We have to care about planetary well-being.
Yes, of course. Otherwise, there'll be no planet to live on and no money to make.
Right. And in my mind, it's also good business. It's good business to, be decent, to treat your employees right. That's another thing about the whole venture system, is that it propagates the problem about wealth distribution, which in the end will not serve anybody. If I'm hyper wealthy and I'm living in a society where too many people have too little, the coherence of a society will fall apart. It's not sustainable. It's not actually creating well-being for anybody in the end. So I think maybe this sounds a little bit naive, but I think even like on a startup level, do you create a workplace where people can actually thrive? If you do, as a company, you build a lot of resilience, and that's worth a lot. When we took Clue through FDA clearance, it was a 2-year process. It was grueling. It was really difficult. It took a small team who've never done this before. It took them all their will, power, and strength to manage to do this. And I honestly only think it worked because we as a company had built some goodwill in the company. People cared about this company. They really wanted to make it work. We couldn't offer them like a huge reward, but what we could offer them was a 4-day work week so they could actually have lives. We could offer them things that made them feel like they could show up as full humans in this organization. They could feel safe and valued and all these things. And I think that's what actually got us the kind of business result as well. So I just think it's like, well, why would you not treat your users' privacy right? Well, and bracket, because the system kind of rewards a little bit that behavior. And I think that's a responsibility on the investor side as well. And in the end, of course, users have to choose. But the challenge with that part is that for a user, it's so difficult, it's borderline impossible to really know which tech company can I trust? What are they going to do with my data? Are these founders making ethical choices? Are they hiring diverse teams? And the only kind of guidance I would say is look at people's business models. If you don't understand their business model, probably something that isn't so great is potentially going on. But even that is not foolproof. In Flow's case, they have a fine business model. They have a premium subscription model, the same as Clue does. I think that's very easy to understand. But then maybe you have to look at other cues, how they're conducting themselves. But yeah, that's a whole different subject about trust. I understand many people don't trust tech companies for good reasons, and it's disappointing.
The fact that 2% of all venture capital goes to women startups can be quite disheartening. What do you think women could do to overcome these challenges and hurdles?
Mm-hmm. You know, on one hand, we can only do things ourselves and we have to feel empowered and we can go navigate the world. But I'm also a little bit tired of women fixing themselves to fit into a system that was built that just doesn't fit. I think a lot of women they're going and they're raising their own funds and they're building accelerators and they're building their own solutions because they're tired of battling a system that doesn't really appreciate or value their contributions. But you also have to be pragmatic, right? We are not living in a separate bubble. We're living in the world. So, I mean, I remember somebody said, bring a man to your pitch meetings, just like kind of any man. And I was like, I didn't get it when I heard it. I thought it sounded ridiculous, but I was probably give the same advice. Like, and in a way, that's also fine. Build diverse teams. You need the men too. If you're building FemTech, you need them as co-founders and investors and journalists and all kind of people. So I think that's important that we, as female founders, actually don't say built by women for women, but that we rather say built by diverse teams for the world. That we model these partnerships that we want to see. We need men. So we also need to be inviting them in and helping them understand our world. So that's another thing. And many women are also very private about their struggles. They pretend all is good. They don't actually say when something is off. They don't show their anger. They don't say they have a period pain. They say they have a headache. And I know why women do this because the price can be very high when you show your more sort of vulnerable self or your anger. But I think that is the future, to say what we need, say what we want, say clearly when there's something we don't want. Don't laugh at their stupid jokes. Don't service them. I see so many women service men in a way they don't have to. And ask for support. We are also part of maintaining this system sometimes because it's very risky and dangerous when we don't. I get why people do it. But I think like in little ways we can start saying, no, yes, me. Sure, support each other.
I think that also comes with like just being more aware of what's going on, just being more conscious of these different things that
Yes.
happen that you normalize. I've been working in tech for 15 years and I had struggles and challenges, but I wasn't really aware of them because I felt like they were my own individual experiences. And it wasn't until I started talking to others that I realized these things, they're a real thing that are experienced by
Yeah.
many women. And it's not just me individually. Yeah, just becoming more aware and understanding like cultural things as well that impact how you behave today that
Yes.
perhaps you shouldn't put up with.
Yes. And I want to say help raise awareness for men too,
Mm,
because of many of these things are very invisible if you don't experience them on your own body. Both are like biological experiences and these sort of human interaction things. And I think there are ways where we can include men into understanding what's going on that isn't finger pointing, because many men also suffer in these systems. I think that's also really important to say. Men need liberation too,
mm.
and we can help with that. You know, we can be supportive also of the men who don't fulfill these sort of gender normative stereotypes.
Do you think the government plays a role in this as well, in terms of policies and, I suppose, creating these big changes?
Yeah, I definitely think so, because the last couple of years, the public players have started to get vocal about femtech and female health being important and something that they want to prioritize politically and economically. And it gives a kind of maybe like a social approval that this is important and it's not just a little bit like irrelevant almost. We know that if you invest into women's health, you invest into economic well-being of societies. Like, we have the data. McKinsey came out with this report this year that many people thankfully saw, and one of the striking numbers is that if you look at how much it costs the world that women are not getting adequate health care, they have heavy bleeding or they get birth injuries or all these different things, it costs the planet $1 trillion every single year. We could save $1 trillion every single year if women were well in their bodies. And the biggest actually cost in this bucket is actually people going through menopause. They lose a lot of work days. They're just not thriving as much as they could be. So I think the public players starting to be like, oh, actually, let's look here. It just creates this kind of gravitas of like, yes, we need to invest money here. We will get huge returns in human well-being, in economic growth, in societal well-being, because we don't lose women, and I think also in planetary well-being level.
Just to finish off, you are now writing a book about your experiences in FemTech. Can you share a little bit more about that? Like, what do we have to look forward to in reading?
Yes, I have actually written like almost the entire book. I really wanted it to come out in America. I wrote it in English, and it has been difficult. I get the feedback that I don't have enough followers on TikTok or Instagram, which has been quite surprising. I mean, I don't have any, so that's true. But I've been surprised that that's such an important factor for getting a book published. So hope the book will come out. I think the perspective is needed, because there are very few books about female founders telling their stories and who maybe also bring in more societal or big picture perspective. I would love to have an opinion about tech's role in the world, but also tell the story of, yeah, you can start with a post-it note on your bedroom wall, and it can become a company that can make a difference on some level in the world. And so if I don't get it out as a book in the US, I will do something else with the material. It will get out somehow. That I'm very committed to. I think that's one of the ways I can give back.
First of all, I hope this book does get published. I know that a lot of women would be very intrigued and would be very interested in reading your book. So I hope you do get those followers. So everybody go and follow you, Ida, on social media.
Do it on
Yes.
LinkedIn, because I'm not really active in the other channels. I maybe should be, but so far I'm not.
Yeah. I think many of us struggle to become active. We know we should for our personal branding, but it's a struggle. Do you have any parting words, any words of advice or wisdom for our audience?
Maybe I'll say, if any of your listeners are thinking about starting a company in femtech, I would say really trust that what you think is needed out there is needed out there. Because you have a very unique set of life experiences that the people across the table most likely won't have. And they might challenge your idea and be like, is this really important? Is this really a business case? But if you really have conviction, if you have really felt this on your own body and you can see it in your communities, then probably it's a pretty good idea. So trust that you know that you know. That would be
Great.
my
Thank
advice.
you. I always have 3 questions to end our calls. I'll do this quick fire round, so they don't have to be,
Yeah.
you don't have to expand too much. But first of all, is there a book or a podcast that you listen to that you could recommend to our audience? It doesn't have to be business or tech related, it could be anything.
I read a book recently called Utopia for Realists. It's by a Dutch economist. I think he is. Is he an economist? Academic, let's just say that. And it's a book about the importance of thinking about what society could be. If you could make it anything, what would you make it? Because I think we need good ideas. We need fantasy to really have new ideas that can be so attractive that we go and try and build them. Society can be in many ways. So that's a great book. Utopia for Realists.
Great. I'll check it out and try and link it in the show notes. What has one piece of advice been that served you really well?
I remember one of our first angels, he said, find your tribe. And with that, he meant investors that really get what you're trying to do, that share your vision and your value set as much as possible. And I think that's true also for employees and your co-founders. Finding people that where you don't have to battle like the fundamentals. You will battle everything else, but share the kind of the deep convictions. Yeah.
And if you had one wish that you could make come true, what would that be?
If there was a way that we could quantify and measure a broader sense of success, I think that would change many things very fundamentally. I wish that we had a broader sense of success.
Thank you for sharing that today. It's been wonderful having you on and meeting you in person after reading about you so much on social media, especially around this post that you shared. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.